The Second World War is often remembered for dramatic battles in Europe and the Pacific, but the war in Asia began years earlier. Long before the attack on Pearl Harbor, China was already fighting a brutal war against Japanese invasion. The Chinese military played a crucial and often overlooked role in the global conflict, resisting aggression, tying down large numbers of enemy troops, and helping the Allied powers weaken Japanese expansion. The struggle between China and Japan became one of the longest wars of the 20th century. The roots of this conflict can be traced back to 1931, when Japan invaded Manchuria and created the puppet state of Manchukuo. This act of aggression marked the beginning of Japanese expansion on the Asian mainland. However, the full-scale conflict began in 1937 with the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War. After a clash between Chinese and Japanese troops near Beijing, Japan launched a massive invasion of Chinese territory. What followed was a devastating war that would last 8 years and eventually merge into the larger global conflict of World War II. At the time, China faced enormous challenges. The Chinese military was divided, under-equipped, and struggling with internal political divisions. The main military force was the National Revolutionary Army, commanded by the leader of the Republic of China, Chiang Kai-shek. Despite its large numbers, the Chinese army lacked modern weapons, tanks, and aircraft compared to the well-equipped Japanese military. Japan's army had modern artillery, mechanized units, and strong air support, giving it a major advantage in the early stages of the war. One of the first major confrontations of the war was the Battle of Shanghai in 1937. This battle became one of the largest and bloodiest urban battles of the early war period. Chinese forces defended the city fiercely for more than 3 months. Even though Japan eventually captured Shanghai, the battle demonstrated the determination of Chinese soldiers and their willingness to resist despite heavy casualties. It also showed the international community that China was determined to fight back rather than surrender quickly. Following the fall of Shanghai, Japanese forces advanced toward the Chinese capital at the time, Nanjing. After capturing the city in December 1937, Japanese troops carried out one of the most horrific atrocities of the war, known as the Nanjing Massacre. Thousands of civilians and prisoners of war were killed, and the event shocked the world. For China, it became a symbol of resistance and strengthened the determination of the Chinese military to continue fighting. Despite losing several major cities, the Chinese government refused to surrender. The capital was moved inland to the city of Chongqing, which became the center of Chinese resistance during the war. From this mountainous region, the Chinese military continued to organize defenses and coordinate military operations against Japanese forces. Japanese air raids frequently targeted Chongqing, but the Chinese government and military managed to maintain their resistance. Another important aspect of the Chinese war effort was guerrilla warfare. While the nationalist forces fought large conventional battles, communist forces also played a role in resisting Japan. These forces were led by Mao Zedong and operated mainly in rural areas. They used guerrilla tactics such as ambushes, sabotage, and attacks on Japanese supply lines. These operations disrupted Japanese control and forced Japan to spread its troops across a vast territory. During the war, the two main Chinese political factions, the Nationalists and the Communists, formed a temporary alliance known as the Second United Front. Although these groups had been rivals before the war, they agreed to cooperate in order to resist Japanese invasion. This united resistance helped China continue the fight despite enormous difficulties. China also received support from other allied nations. Countries such as the United States and United Kingdom provided military aid, equipment, and training to help strengthen Chinese forces. American advisors worked with Chinese troops to improve their organization and combat effectiveness. One famous example of international support was the American volunteer air group known as the Flying Tigers. These pilots helped defend Chinese cities and attacked Japanese aircraft and supply routes. Supply lines were a critical issue for China during the war. Because Japan controlled much of China's coastline, supplies from allied nations had to be delivered through difficult land routes. One of the most important supply routes was the Burma Road, which connected China to allied forces in Southeast Asia. Through this route, weapons, fuel, and other essential materials were transported to support Chinese resistance. The long struggle of the Chinese military had a major strategic impact on the war. By continuing to resist Japan, China forced the Japanese military to keep millions of troops